Tendai Mwari. Before I start what I'm going to say, I would invite you, if you have pen and paper, to get it ready. Because what I'm going to talk about, unfortunately, we don't have copies of, but it might be useful in terms of getting feedback from you. There are 17 headings I'm going to give you. So even if you haven't got paper, the back of the agenda will do to just write down these few words. And don't worry, I will cue you when you need to start writing. What I'm here to talk about is one of the key documents that the National African People's Parliament is working on. And it's not the exclusive domain of the Legal and Constitution Committee. They are working on primarily the Constitution of the National African People's Parliament, and that defines our status, legal and otherwise. It defines our structures, and it defines our decision-making processes, and really constitutes our status socially, politically, and so on. So that Constitution is a working process that will take some time. And by sometimes, I don't necessarily mean weeks, and maybe not even months. A Constitution that realizes our intentions as an African-centered parliament has to consider other aspects that maybe other constitutions do not. And Brother Shomari is going to be presenting on some of those aspects later on. I talk about this because I think it's important for us to understand the context of what I'm going to be talking about. And so we need to understand that the Constitution is going to take time to write, because it has to be in our image, it has to be in our interests, and it has to be reflective of not what we stand for, but how we're going to organize ourselves legally and otherwise. So a constitution is a status document. What we need to accompany that is a document which says what we are about, the issues that we will address, and how we will address them. And that is what our people need to be signing up to when they sign on the dotted line to say they are part of the National African People's Parliament, either as an individual or as a member organization. That document is called a manifesto. So a manifesto is an issue-based document which says, what are we about as a National African People's Parliament? What are the issues that are on top for us in the UK? And what are the key decisions and key actions that we want to take, either as African people or somewhere in the system out there that they need to take in order for our mission to be fulfilled. So there are parallel documents that are going to be in process of development, the Constitution and the Manifesto. What I have here, which you don't have copies of, and I do apologize, is an outline. It's a contents page for the Manifesto. When people say, well, what is it about? What do you stand for? What are you going to do about X, Y, or Z? This is the document that should tell us that. So I'm just going to run through the contents page, and I will let you know when I'm going to start on those key 17 headings that I'd like some feedback from you on, so that you can jot them down. And even if you can share, then you can see over somebody's shoulder as to what they are. So we're looking at a document that's going to be around 25 pages long. And it's aiming to be half the length of the current Constitution, which is in draft. So you can see that that's a bigger piece of work, but it's not the piece of work that is the public face of the National African People's Parliament. The Manifesto is the one that you should be able to pick up in your corner shop, in your organization, on Heathfield Road in Birmingham, and other places in the dumpling shops around the place. The Manifesto is what you will pick up to tell you what we are about. So it will consist of an introduction and opening remarks. So it will set a brief context. And then it will go into a history and a background about the National African People's Parliament. And within that, we will talk about the Black People's Day of Action, which I hope you have all booked off as annual leave if you work on a plantation, because you will need to be there in London on March the 2nd. So it will give a little history and background as to how this Parliament has come about. It will have a mission statement. And within that mission statement, there will be our aims and objectives. And Brother Leader talked about our aims and objectives earlier and asked the meeting who had actually seen them. They are on the Facebook page, and they will be on the website when it's re-established and put up again. So the next section after that will be a summary statement. The summary statement will be on the policy areas, the key policy areas that we are going to address. So that'll be a short paragraph of around 50 words. And then after that, there'll be a page which states the African Pledge, because that's part of our sign-up and our personal commitment. The same way that we've been taught the Lord's Prayer and Humpty Dumpty and all those other things, we should be able to recite the African Pledge like that. So then this is where you need to start writing. What we're looking for is a page. So it's going to be a very concise page on each of the policy areas. And when I say it's not the exclusive domain of the Legal and Constitution Committee, because we're looking on the experts in our community, the people who are best placed to write on the different policy areas, that one-page statement, which will start with a quotation, because within our document, we're going to honor our scholars. We're going to honor their wisdom. So we're going to start with a pertinent quote to introduce that policy area. And then we're going to have a position statement, and this is when the different writers of the policy statements will be drafted in to write these position statements, which will be about the context and the supporting facts of that context, for example, around education, for example. So what we will end with is each policy area having required actions, 2 or 3, maybe 4 bullet points at the end saying, in relation to this policy area, this is what we intend to do. Or in relation to this policy area, this is what we want Babylon to do. So please, you need to start writing. The areas, policy areas within the manifesto, this is draft, so we want your comments. Culture, number 1. Spirituality, number 2. Number 3, Kuchichagulia, i.e. politics and governance. Number 4, Ujama, or economics. Number 5 is education. Number 6 is health. Number 7 is social welfare. Number 8 is law. Number 9, employment. Number 10, housing. Number 11, the Ma'afa. Number 12 is reparations. Number 13 is global white supremacy and Euro-American imperialism. Number 14, Neo-Ma'afa, UK and beyond, i.e. foreign policy. Number 15, environment. Number 16, customs and immigration. And finally, sports and leisure / entertainment. So those will be the 17 policy areas. Then to finish, at the end of the manifesto will be a list of iNAPP member organizations. There will be useful contacts and references, and there will be an expression of interest form and a card carrier aspect to that back page that people can tear off and express an interest and get involved. Tena mwere.
Okay, I just saw a couple of hands. We have to be very, very quick, brothers and sisters. I'm going to ask everyone to please try and stay to the end.